I wanted to start out by saying that, of course, I'm a proud alumni of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command and served in several different USASOC units, most notably, of course, 3rd Special Forces Group right there at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
How did being a soldier help you become an astronaut?
Oh, thank you for asking that question. It's one of my favorite questions to answer because I describe my career like this. I was a soldier, and then a physician, and then an astronaut. In that order. I made my decisions in that order, but I'm still a soldier. I'm still a soldier at heart. I'm a soldier through and through. And I made that decision first. Everything that I have that before the day I was selected by NASA came from the Army, came from the military. My undergraduate education, my graduate level education, all my operational experiences, all my military skills and training, all came from the military, all came from the Army. And while I've had a very fulfilling career now also as a NASA astronaut, as an Army astronaut, as an active duty Army astronaut, if I had not been selected as an astronaut in 2013 and I had continued my career as a military physician taking care of our special operations warriors in USASOC, I thought that I had the best job in the world then, and I still believe that if I had not been selected as an astronaut, I still would have had the best job in the world. Taking care of SOF warriors in combat, absolutely dream job.
What's it like to see the
But I think it was a question.
What's
Like to see the moon and the stars and the planets?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha, absolutely. So, right now the space station is traveling at 17,000 miles an hour, and our orbital altitude above the Earth is 250 miles straight up. Now that sounds very high, but in the grand scheme of things, that we aren't really that much closer to the moon, to the planets, and to the stars than you are on the surface of the Earth. Our great advantage is that we're above the Earth's atmosphere, and so we don't have, and the atmosphere causes a fair amount of distortion when you look up at the night sky. So we have the benefit of being above the atmosphere, and things look much clearer, much crisper. In fact, I even commented on one of my spacewalks that stars don't twinkle because we don't have the distortion of the atmosphere, so the stars look constant, and you can sometimes make out the color of like a planet like Mars. You can almost make it out with the naked eye, just like you can on Earth. You can see that it's a red dot, but we would still need binoculars. We don't have a telescope up here, but we have binoculars up here that we can look at where planets are, and we can pick things out. The moon looks very vivid, very crisp. And of course, we don't look directly at the sun, but we don't have the protection of the Earth's atmosphere, and so that's why we do need to have some of those additional protections in place, because the sun is particularly intense when you don't have the protection of the Earth's atmosphere.
Hi, my name is Connor. Has space debris caused any risk to you while on the space station? If not, what are some major risks to you while on there?
Space debris is definitely a concern, and NASA, with the help of the military, actually we track all the debris that's in orbit around the Earth. That's about larger than your fist. Unfortunately, things that are smaller than your fist are not well tracked, and so there is the possibility that they can strike the space station. And when I was out on my spacewalks, I could see evidence of small micrometeoroids and maybe small debris, and some of them are maybe as small as the head of a pin, but they can cause, because of the energy of the speed we're traveling and whatever object is also traveling, these small objects cause quite a bit of damage, and they can cause little nicks and burrs on handrails and some of the surfaces outside the ISS. But we do put blankets and special blankets to help protect important things like boxes with electronics and avionics in them to protect from debris. So that's definitely something that's a concern, because if it was large enough and it penetrated the hull of the station, we are obviously in a pressurized environment here. I have an atmosphere around me that's similar to the air that you're breathing on the Earth. And if we poke a hole in it, if you think about it like a can of soda, if we poked a hole in it and it could leak out, that would be a problem. So that's something that we keep track of. Luckily, nothing like that has happened since I've been up here, but we have had to seek out leaks on the space station before.
My question is, are there any defense systems on the space station?
So there are definitely things on the space station to protect us from the harsh environment of space. And I mentioned a couple of those things that protect us from radiation, and then the thermal environment of being exposed to the sun and being in extreme heat and then extreme cold and back and forth between extreme heat and cold all the time, constantly, because we're seeing the sun, a sunrise or a sunset every 45 minutes, so we're making a complete trip around the Earth every hour and a half. So that's a lot of exposure to the sun, and then the radiation environment, of course. But in terms of defense systems, the ISS is peaceful. It's a peaceful endeavor between multiple space agencies. 15 partner nations participating in the ISS program, and it's for the betterment of humankind on the Earth, as well as to further exploration outside, beyond the Earth, and go on to the Moon, and then eventually to Mars.
What do you think about most often while you are on the ISS?
Well, I certainly think about how lucky I am to be here, how fortunate I am, how blessed I am to be here and to represent so many different parts of the Army up here. But of course, one of the things I'm representing up here is my family, as well as the Army family, but I think often about my family. I know that many of you in the room, I would venture to guess all of you in the room, have experienced deployments, military deployments, and understand separation and how difficult that is. And I'm a military family as well, and my family is experiencing that separation just the same as deployment right now. My wife and kids, I've been married for 20 years. I have 4 children that range in age from high school down to elementary school, and I know they miss me very much, and I think about them often. And just like any deployment, even though the dangers of being in space are different than being deployed to a combat zone, there are a lot of similarities, and the separation is just the same, and the reunions are just as sweet. I know you all can identify.
Hi, my name is Evelyn. Can you see Mars from there? Hi, my name is Evelyn. Can you see Mars from there?
So yes, and in fact, you can see Mars from the Earth as well, if you know exactly where to look. And we can see Mars up here, and it still just looks like a dot to us, because we're really, in the grand scheme of things, we're not that much closer to Mars than you are. But it just looks like a little red dot. But it is a goal of NASA to make it to Mars eventually.
Hi, my name is Kennedy. What does it feel like when you're rocketing from Earth to space?
Well, I'd start by telling you that we get a lot of really great training to prepare us for the day of launch. We use simulators that we practice in for hours and hours, so we understand all the controls and everything that's going on inside. I mentioned that we train in high-performance aircraft, and so we experience those effects of G-forces pushing on us when we're in tight turns, and we feel what it's like to wear a mask and a helmet and a cumbersome suit. And so by the time the day comes for launch, we've experienced all of those strange feelings, and we bring it all together on the day of launch, and we feel those forces on our chest as we accelerate, almost 3 to 3.5 to 4 times my body weight pressing on my chest as we accelerate. And then eventually, once we get into orbit, the engine shuts off, and then instantaneously you're weightless. And that feeling I would describe as like you're all of a sudden flipped upside down, and you're hanging in your straps. And then that feeling never goes away for 8 months, 9 months in my case. The first couple of days it's very disorienting, and things are tough to tell, and tough to figure things out. But eventually, up and has no relative meaning anymore. I don't feel like I'm upside down right now.
What food do you miss most?
One more time.
Hello, my name's
What food do I miss
Thomas.
most? I got you. Good food. Well, I would say that I miss candy. I'm a real sweet tooth guy. And I brought a couple examples here. First of all, a lot of our food is MRE style. But but I miss candy, and I can never miss an opportunity to eat candy. I also wanted to show you what water does. Mention what an honor it is for me, again, to be associated with the Army Special Operations Command. I said before we launched that even 8 months, the greatest honor of my life has been serving special operations, or serving our soldiers in special operations in the combat zone. And 8 and eventually 9 months in space isn't going to change the fact that I believe that is the greatest honor of my life. And so, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for what you do for our country. And thank you for letting me count myself among you.
We got about 200 crew members of expeditions like 120, 121, 122. I think it's about 30 years down the road. So, hey, thanks for the time. Thanks for what you do up there and serving our nation and our community. We look forward to seeing you back here in London. Hopefully, you'll get more.